Denver bans law enforcement from wearing masks, aimed at President Trump's mass deportation forces in the streets.
It's not clear how easy it would be to enforce these laws.
The leading Democratic candidate for Colorado Attorney General is padding her resume with false claims.
It's an exaggeration.
It's not a theater, but Congresswoman Boebert got busted on video again.
We will go off the record.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
The state's fight over Colorado river water gives more power to the Trump administration to decide who gets what.
We're very concerned.
That's tonight on Next. Denver City Council just unanimously approved a ban on law enforcement wearing masks. The Trump administration has said its masked immigration enforcers will not obey. Legal experts tell our Angeline McCall that Denver's rule is likely legal, but good luck enforcing it against the feds.
At Denver City Council, it was a unanimous vote. Over a resolution, some wonder what enforcement looks like.
I think there are some things that are going to stick better than others.
On Monday, Council passed a new policy that bans any officer, including federal ones, from wearing masks. And just last week, Mayor Johnson announced federal immigration agents are banned from city property.
Just enforcing a mask ban is going to put the officers, of course, in a difficult position. But if they are going to carry out state law, that federal agent is going to fight it, and then it's going to be dropped.
MSU Associate Professor Jasmine Chavez says on the ground, enforcement means local police would be responsible for arresting or citing federal officers, something difficult under the Supremacy Clause. That means federal law takes precedent over state or local law.
Now, the problem is that, let's say that a local department does try to cite an officer or federal agent under the state law. That federal agent is going to go ahead and challenge that citation in court.
Enforcement is one question, legality is another.
But I do think these orders are plausibly legal. I think it's a close question, but enforcement will certainly be the more difficult side of things.
CU Boulder professor Jonathan Booth says it will be up to the agencies and city on how this plays out.
There is the potential that this could set up some kind of clash between the city of Denver and the federal government. It really depends whether the mayor and the police department are willing to stick to their guns and actually enforce these ordinances.
DHS has already said it won't comply with either policy. Regardless of enforceability, Chavez says it's another tool as cities want to push back against immigration enforcement in their communities.
I do think, though, what it does is that it does add a different layer of accountability and also visibility so that our officers are there to be able to document and to witness.
California has already tested something similar. The Supreme Court deemed parts of it illegal, and Democratic lawmakers in California are expected to redraft some changes there to make it legal. Denver took notes from that Supreme Court battle in hopes that it could stand legal scrutiny. But something that we're still waiting on, Kyle, is really how or what the guidelines will be for police officers on these scenes. Yeah,
they're the ones who are going to have to, at some point, interface with a federal officer and say what and do what.
And the police officer union here in Denver already said in a committee publicly that they were concerned about what enforcement looked like. We reached out to them for an interview today. We didn't hear back, but that's certainly something that's on our minds as this, is now gone through and passed.
All right, yet to be seen. Angeline McCall, thank you. A federal judge is again telling the Trump administration it must allow members of Congress to make surprise oversight visits to ICE detention facilities. The Department of Homeland Security imposed a new policy last month requiring a week's notice before legislators can go into detention centers. A judge has found that policy is illegal. This has gone back and forth in courts for months after Democratic Congressman Joe Neguse and Jason Crow from Colorado sued the administration last year. They demanded that they still have the right to do those oversight visits, which are specifically protected under law. This is the judge's third time blocking or limiting the federal government's attempts to prevent unannounced oversight. The Trump administration is appealing. The leading Democratic candidate for Colorado Attorney General is making false claims about her qualifications. Current Secretary of State and AG candidate Jena Griswold claims to have high-level courtroom experience she does not have, raising questions about both her experience and her honesty.
I'm going to take on the billionaires and corporations as Attorney General to protect.
That is Democratic Secretary of State Jena Griswold. She's running for Attorney General. That's Colorado's chief legal officer. And this claim by Griswold about her qualifications.
And in 2024, I followed the Constitution and argued at the Supreme Court that Donald Trump should not be eligible for president.
That claim is not true.
It's not a complicated thing.
It's false. No matter how many times Griswold says it during her campaign for AG, that she argued before the Supreme Court or argued at the Supreme Court, she didn't.
I found the Supreme Court argument exhilarating.
That is 9 News legal analyst Scott Robinson, and this is a certificate of his admission to the Supreme Court bar, where he actually did argue a case and won. Griswold was simply someone being represented in a case before the Supreme Court.
That's a far cry from actually getting to argue in front of the court itself.
When we asked Griswold's campaign why she's making these false claims, they responded with a statement saying, in part, the word argue does not exclusively mean oral argument.
When a lawyer presents an argument in person to the United States Supreme Court, they have argued before or argued at the Supreme Court. Anything else, it's not arguing to the court.
This is the woman who actually argued the case that Griswold is falsely taking credit for arguing before the court.
Mr. Chief Justice, and may it please the court.
Colorado Solicitor General Shannon Stevenson. That's her team photo on the day when she, not Jenna Griswold, argued before the Supreme Court.
To a lawyer, the terms are entirely crystal clear, perhaps not to the general public.
That may have been true until the public sees this. Griswold's Democratic primary opponents for AG all have extensive courtroom experience. Michael Doherty is a state and local prosecutor, Boulder County DA. Hetal Doshi is a federal prosecutor, and David Seligman is a consumer attorney. We asked Griswold's campaign if she has ever argued a case in any courtroom. They pointed to one case more than a decade ago, in 2011 or 2012, they said, in the District of Columbia. Records show that Griswold was only admitted to the D.C. bar for the final 5 months or so of that time frame, and Griswold's campaign did not provide details that would allow us to confirm that single case. Well, we're now seeing the moment that Hillary Clinton found out that Colorado's Republican Congressman Lauren Boebert snapped a picture of Clinton during a closed-door deposition on Jeffrey Epstein. Boebert sure talked tough after that breach briefly disrupted the deposition, but now we know Boebert backed down in private.
There are photos that are being released of the secretary as she is testifying from inside this room. Can you please advise me as to whether or not that's permissible and consistent with the rules, particularly given that we have asked for a public hearing?
I'm done with this. If you guys are doing that, I am done. You can hold me in contempt from now until the cows come home. This is just typical behavior.
We will go off the record.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
So I would like to understand how that's permissible.
Before the hearing was.
It doesn't matter. We all are abiding by the same rules.
I will take that down.
Ooh. Boebert sent 2 photos of Clinton to MAGA influencer Benny Johnson. Photos ended up online, temporarily derailed the deposition, which is noted there. Clinton had called on to be public, but Republicans would not allow it to happen in an open hearing. The proceeding then continued with an admonition from the chairman that everybody had to follow the rules. When reporters asked Boebert why she violated committee protocol and took the photos, Boebert said, quote, "Why not?" The 7 states that get their water from the Colorado River cannot agree on how to divvy it up fairly. So now the Trump administration could decide which states get what water. Our Mark Salinger is hearing worries from people who work to protect that river.
The future of the Colorado River is as uncertain as it's ever been.
The river is shrinking. Climate change, rising temperatures, less snowpack.
Andy Mueller is the general manager of the Colorado River District, which works to protect and conserve the water on the western slope. The rules that govern water use on the river expire in September.
The states have not met that agreement, have not been able to come to agreement, and have actually blown past 2 major deadlines, which puts the decision-making process back in the hands of the Secretary of Interior.
The Bureau of Reclamation released several proposals for Colorado River management. Andy says they all fall short of what's needed as this part of the country faces a new reality with less water.
I would say that we are very concerned about the Bureau of Reclamation not understanding the likely future hydrology that we're facing. It's a really critical place right now.
The supply of water is shrinking while the demand is increasing. Critical reservoirs like Lake Mead and Lake Powell are already low. Andy calls it a basic math problem, but not everyone agrees on the answer. That could lead the Trump administration to decide the rules themselves, which inevitably would lead to years of lawsuits.
I think the states and the water users in the states understand this river better than our Secretary of Interior, who's based in Washington, D.C.
Andy says the solution lies in the lower basin states like Arizona, California, Nevada, cutting water use and accounting for massive amounts of water that evaporates down the river.
Against all odds, I'm pretty optimistic that we will find a solution to move forward.
Colorado's unusually dry winter is having an impact on the river because the reservoir levels are already so low. Andy says even one year like this can have a huge impact. The snowpack that usually fills those reservoirs, Kyle, is so low this year.
What is the next step in this process? I know we've been following for years, and it just seems stalled.
So the rules expire in September. By mid-summer or so, July, you'll start to see if the 7 states haven't come up with a plan to address it on their own. You'll start to see the Department of Interior say, okay, what are we going to do? And then you start potentially seeing everything come to a head there.
All right, Mark Salinger, thank you. For 299 straight weeks, we have seen the good in this world because you have proactively made it happen. Your latest Word of Thanks microgiving campaign has raised more than $50,000 for Project Self-Sufficiency of Northern Colorado, a nonprofit that helps single parents go back to school, plan a career path, increase their income, transition off government assistance, and become truly self-sufficient. You have raised more than $17 million for Colorado's nonprofits through Word of Thanks since 2020 as we head into our 300th consecutive weekly microgiving campaign this Wednesday. Keep telling me about the nonprofits in Colorado that you support and the nonprofits that support you and your neighbors. That's how we find out about a number of these wonderful groups. Email next@9news.com or text next anytime, 303-871-1491. The city of Aurora settles a lawsuit over conservative city council members killing public comment.
We didn't know at that time it was going to grow, but 40 years later, here we are.
Small group of women in the 1980s had an idea that continues to this day. That's next. When the conservative majority on Aurora City Council got booted by voters last year in favor of progressives, the new council immediately restored public comment. Now, a legal settlement means that Aurora City Council must continue to allow in-person meetings with public comment for years into the future. Aurora's leaders hid from public comment following the killing of Kylan Lewis by Aurora police in May of 2024. People protesting his death attended every city council meeting in the months afterwards. In response to the protests, city council voted to move the meetings online and suspended public comment in June of last year. The protesters then filed suit against the city, claimed that eliminating public comment violated the First Amendment. The settlement requires city council to keep having in-person meetings and allow an hour of public comment for no less than 3 years. And the city must also pay $75,000 in attorney's fees. Colorado's new $25 million Firehawk helicopter actually helped to put out a fire in Boulder over the weekend. As we've told you here, that thing gets about as much use as the new exercise bike that your husband swore he would ride if you bought it. The Firehawk helped ground crews contain that fire near Chautauqua Park over the weekend. Strong winds had grounded the Firehawk last week as older helicopters were dispatched instead to fight the fires along the Front Range. The conditions in Boulder on Saturday were good to go for the Firehawk, and it was very helpful in that firefight. You know, Chris Bianchi, snow would be helpful in the fire situation as well. I heard on the internet that Denver is going to get 14 inches of snow at the end of this week.
Kyle, where did you hear that from? Well, if you heard it on the internet, just take it with a grain of salt. There is this viral, somewhere on the internet, and there's been this viral, look, I'm just going to say this. We've been getting bombarded, nonstop questions. Is it going to snow a foot in Denver this week? There's this viral social media, I don't know, maybe wish casting going on. Let me just answer it for you plain and clear. It is not going to snow a foot in Denver this week. We've been getting that question nonstop all weekend, going back to last week. And no, it is not going to snow a foot in Denver. Be careful with what you see on the internet. And of course, you always got your handy-dandy nerds in suits and ties to tell you about what's actually going to happen. Rain and snow for us in the mountains. That'll start up tonight. This is pretty insignificant. And most of those impacts will be at pass levels. So this is a very high in terms of elevation snow event for us here in the mountains because it's so warm for us in the high country. We will see some rain showers along the Front Range tomorrow afternoon. Rain, not snow. And watch this as we get to tomorrow afternoon. We're going to see a brief period of sunshine, and that will likely allow for the possibility for a few thunderstorms to develop for us along the Front Range. Not talking about severe weather, but yes, some rumbles of thunder tomorrow afternoon, especially northern Colorado, Larimer, Weld counties. Could see that tomorrow afternoon, and some rain showers that will bring us some needed relief and probably help out with fire danger over the next couple of days as well. 7-day forecast, much cooler tomorrow. Then we go right back into the 60s Wednesday and Thursday, and then much cooler with a chance for some snow for us on Friday, but no, it is not going to snow a foot for us. Final note is that we have a total lunar eclipse that'll be visible right here in Denver tonight. Maximum of that will be at 4:33 tomorrow morning, and it'll be the last total solar eclipse that you can see in Denver until June of 2029.
For decades, a small group has gathered with a simple goal to just do something kind and generous for their neighbors. Hey, a reminder, you can catch this program streaming each weeknight 6 p.m. on 9 News Plus. And next is a podcast each weeknight, wherever you get those. A community tradition in Longmont is marking 4 decades of stitching together generosity. Our Byron Reed has that.
Patterns are created to guide.
Oh, it's just the designing of it, the colors you get to pick, and you're making something that's worthwhile.
For Maxine Bunker, quilting is an art form she and her friends love to do.
They love doing it, all of us. We love it.
Bunker is a founding member of the Interfaith Quilters in Longmont, a group started 40 years ago made up of about 100 people who routinely get together on Mondays to stitch for a good cause.
We want to help people and we want to do what's right, and it's wonderful.
The group creates everything from handcrafted table runners to wall hangings that are sold to support people in need.
And our charities are the Our Center of Longmont, the Safe House of St. Vrain Valley. But we also help anyone else that needs help.
Tracy Murphy has been a member since the group started in 1986. The Quilters have been hosting yearly sales since they started, including their March event this weekend.
By buying one at our sale, you're helping a number of people. And you don't know who they are, but you've become part of us.
The group has also made quilts for cancer patients, flood victims, and families rebuilding their lives.
They call us and they say, we need so many quilts of this or that. And so we get to work.
It's a pattern these quilters have fallen into for 4 decades to make sure people facing hardship get comfort in knowing they are loved.
Their lives are better, and that maybe the things that we did for them will give them a better chance.
For next,
this world needs groups like ours, and we all need to help each other.
I'm Byron Reed.
Small thing, big impact. If you want to check it out, this coming weekend they will fill the gym at First Lutheran Church in Longmont with hundreds of those beautiful homemade quilts. We are back with your feedback. It's a surprise till Zvi gets it to me. Thank you. That's next. Feedback from John in Thornton, who says, thank you for exposing Jenna Griswold's creative license. Appreciate you keeping it real for everyone. And John, it made me think of something. I don't like it when people say that all politicians lie, because for starters, I don't think that that's true, but it also excuses those who do engage in dishonesty. Honesty should still be the standard, right? For you guys, for us, for everybody. This from Rebecca in Genesee. Kyle, did you just confess on Next that you have not been riding the exercise bike that your wife bought for you? Maybe. I used to be better about the bike. I was into it for a long time, but then I stopped, and right about the same time, my jacket's all shrunk. It's the weirdest thing. See you next time.